Chapter 19. The Briton won his palm and his training became more rigorous, but throughout the scorching summer months he was kept back from the amphitheater. Nero's marriage with Poppy was drawing near, and the most promising gladiators must not be killed before the great days of feasting and holiday. Onesimus, too, on account of his graceful body and good looks, was being carefully protected from death or scarring. Daily he fought with blunt weapons and developed his muscles in the gymnasium. To accustom him to the sight of blood, he was forced to go twice a week at dawn and witness condemned criminals thrown to the wild beasts, and twice, at a real celebration, he had been paired with a semi-trained gladiator who showed no promise, and he had struck him down easily with a sharp blade. The first time he had trembled and sickened, but the second time he had turned away quickly from the crumpled form in the sand and received his palm, fixing his mind resolutely on the gold and silver pieces showered upon him by the onlookers. He was daily becoming more and more inured to the carnage and bloodshed, and more akin to the hardened brutes around, but two threads held him back from utter vileness and degradation. One was his friendship with the Briton, who seemed incapable of contamination and who hated the whole business from start to finish. This man amid death, violence, and debauchery remained his gentle, childlike self, in the company but not of it. His goodness, the rock to which Onesimus clung lest he lose his humanity and become a beast forever. The second thread was the memory of Irene. He dwelt in the scorching city where the sand reeked of dried blood and men sank lower every day. But her country was the canyon where the air was cold and clean, the water pure, and the rocks sharp and rugged. If he were ever to meet her again, he must not sink to the status of a beast. If he went on winning, he might one day become a rich free man. Like the Briton, some day he might even go home. As the burning, thirsty days passed, the training of this picked group of winners became more specialized. They no longer fought in the amphitheater but rose at dawn for their first exercises and ate apart on a diet of special quality. Their massage took longer, their tournament practice became more intense, their leisure more carefully supervised. Cattle primed for slaughter, their companions called them, but Onesimus was beginning to enjoy himself. All those who survived the great days of the wedding festival would almost certainly receive their rudies at the end, and he could not help knowing that the betting on the winners was almost all on himself and the Briton. Now that the days for the festivities drew near, the group was seldom allowed beyond the barracks, for they were reckoned about the most valuable property in Rome, but even they could not miss the sense of excitement and the frantic preparations that were being made. The Praetorian cohorts of the Campus Martius were drilling in squadrons nearby all day long except for their noon siesta, and the harbors were thronged with ships bringing choice fruits, spices, and gold and silver curios from the ends of the earth. Every country sent its tributes to the emperor, and the menageries were being lavishly replenished. Night after night, great cages were wheeled through the streets bearing hippopotami from the Nubia, lions from Mesopotamia, elephants, tigers, leopards, and panthers from North Africa. Sleep, in certain quarters, became impossible because of their anguished roaring. Everyone was in high holiday mood, for corn and wine and sweetmeats would be showered upon the populace, and all would live to the full for a few glorious weeks. Onesimus, as the opening day drew near, was in a restless mood. By day he exulted, scenting the blood of battle, hearing the clash of arms, sure of victory. If he came through this orgy, he would certainly receive his rudies and rank with some of the greatest names in Rome. But at night he would wake with strange, fearful forebodings, breaking out in perspiration as though the shadow of death already hung over him. One night it was so terrible that he rose and paced the floor of his dormitory, and his friend, the Briton, came and paced beside him. "I know," he said, "this is the terror by night. I do not think I shall ever see my country again. Oh, what would I not give to feel the soft summer rain on my face and smell the wet loam of the oak woods." But the first few days of the festival went well. The Briton was in the Samnite group and fought with sword and shield. Onesimus, in the Thracian group, was armed with a dagger and a buckler, and the two carried all before them. Day after day, when the other entertainments had taken place and the satiated crowd sank back exhausted, they alighted with the other gladiators from their carriages, and new life came to the amphitheater. They marched round the arena in military costume, followed by servants who carried their arms. When they reached the royal box, they turned and extended their right hands to Nero and addressed him. "Hail, Emperor, we, about to die, salute thee." Day after day they saw their opponents sink down, sometimes dead, sometimes wounded. If strength remained, the loser would lift his left arm in an appeal for mercy, and in that deathly silence all eyes were turned to Nero, who could save life or pass the death sentence with a flick of his thumb. Day by day they received costly rewards, dishes laden with gold and precious gifts. They were becoming rich men, and surely it could not be long now before they were liberated. So many had died. Then the blow fell. It had been a tremendous day. The charioteer and their racehorses had given a thrilling performance and covered themselves in glory. 20 elephants had fought to the death with a team of armed barbarians. Criminals had fought with leopards. Elephants had traced Latin phrases in the sand with their trunks, kneeling before the emperor's box. Armed men had fought with bulls, and lions and tigers had torn each other to pieces. And now the jaded spectators, tired of violence, death, and bloodshedding, wilted in the sultry evening. Food, gifts, and purses were showered upon the crowd, for enthusiasm must be kept at fever heat. Poppy, sitting beside her husband, was seen to yawn, and something must be done quickly. Nero whispered to a valet who sped off on an errand. "The gladiators! The gladiators!" It was the cry that usually brought everyone to attention. But tonight Rome languished. The applause was less deafening than usual as the young giants saluted their emperor and went back to draw for their partners. They found the procureur looking thoroughly perturbed. "The divine emperor desires a novelty," he announced. "He has commanded the Briton to fight the Phrygian, Thracian against Samnite, dagger against sword. It will be an ill-matched fight. Take your arms. The music is striking up." So it has come to this. Friend must kill friend. Onesimus averted his eyes and then found that his mouth was dry with fear. The Briton would win the Rudis today, for the sword would triumph easily over the dagger. But he, Onesimus, would not be there to rejoice. "Hurry," hissed the procureur. "The trumpets are blowing." There was a gasp of surprise as the two winners with their rival arms entered the arena, and then roar upon roar of deafening cheers. No need to stimulate the crowd now. Even the Senate had half risen from their stone seats. There was a silent moment of agony, and then the Briton lunged half-heartedly with his sword, and Onesimus deftly dodged and pricked his opponent with the dagger. What was happening? These men were playing for a truce, not fighting to kill. Nero would lose his temper in a moment, and the crowd was screaming to inflame them. The instructor crossed the arena, whip in hand, and began to thrash them on the calves of their legs. "Strike! Slay!" he hissed. "Are you women that you dawdle like this? Strike! Slay, or I will turn the beast on you!" The Briton gave a tremendous lunge, but it was only the flat of his sword that came down on Onesimus' left arm, cracking the bone like matchwood. The boy's buckler fell to the ground, and he sprang close. Shutting his eyes, he plunged the dagger deep into the flesh of the Briton, who gave a last blind thrust into Onesimus' shoulder and staggered backwards, bleeding. He was sinking down, and the screaming, crazy, triumphant crowd had risen to their feet, to a man. Onesimus drew out his dagger from his opponent's breast. He had followed his instincts and pierced him just above the heart. He heard nothing of the savage yelling. He was standing looking down, alone with his pain and his dying friend, who could so easily have killed him if he would. The blue eyes looked straight at him again, and there was neither anger or resentment in the look, only the same patient sorrow and kindness. "Tom Pomponia's God of mercy," he whispered, and then crumpled into the stained sand. The Briton had gone home. "The Rudis! The Rudis!" The words were taken up in a swelling roar all around the amphitheater. Nero was leaning forward from his box, his bloated face creased into a snarling smile as he dropped the coveted wooden sword, the sign of a gladiator's release. Gold, flowers, gifts were falling round him, but Onesimus turned his back on them all and fled from the arena. He was gasping from loss of blood and in agony from his fracture, but this was nothing compared with the agony of his heart. What were riches and fame and glory now? He had killed his friend, the one in whom dwelt the only good that he knew in this vile city. Then let them die together. He was out in the dark streets, and a full moon was shining down on him, and it was blessedly cool. The Tiber was not far off, and he would walk along its bank a little way to where the water was less polluted, and then he hoped it would be oblivion, but he was not sure. There had been a way to eternal joy, but he had long ago refused it. He was conscious of eyes watching him as he dragged his feet along the road, the wild eyes of Archippus as he fell beneath the crowd, the loving eyes of his mother when he dealt her that blow, Glaucus's frightened eyes as he flung down the gold, the sorrowful, forgiving, dying eyes of the Briton. Haunted, conscience-stricken, wretched, he staggered on, and now he stood by the black waters of the river, the fear of death enveloping him, and he hesitated, irresolute. Footsteps on the path beside him. He turned, startled as a figure passed him by, unseeing. But the moonlight shone on the strong Jewish features, and Onesimus knew them instantly. The years rolled away, and he was back in the weaving shed at Ephesus, a tired boy who thought Philemon would never stop talking. "Master Aquila! Master Aquila!" He was down on his knees in his stained finery, clutching the man's cloak with his right hand. Then the moonlight darkened, and the murmur of the river ceased as he fell in a dead faint upon the ground.